Dr. Sarah Chen stood at the edge of the Tibetan plateau, her breath forming clouds in the frigid mountain air. Behind her, the remnants of humanity's last stronghold stretched across the valleys, a sprawling network of caves and hastily constructed bunkers. Above, the alien vessels hung in the stratosphere like metallic thunderclouds, their surfaces reflecting the dying light of the sun. 3 months had passed since they arrived. 3 months of watching Earth's greatest cities fall, of seeing our most powerful weapons bounce harmlessly off their shields. The Arcthrari, as they called themselves, hadn't come to negotiate or study us. They'd come to harvest. Sarah pulled the ancient scroll from her pack, its parchment crackling beneath her fingers. Written in a script that predated known civilization, it had been discovered in a hidden monastery just days before the invasion. For weeks, she and her team had worked tirelessly to decode its messages, even as the world crumbled around them. Dr. Chen. Lieutenant Rodriguez's voice crackled through her earpiece. They're beginning their descent. Whatever you're planning, it needs to happen now. Sarah unrolled the scroll, her eyes tracing the familiar patterns. The monks who had protected it for millennia had left clear warnings. The power contained within these words was never meant to be unleashed, but they had never faced extinction. I'm starting the incantation, she responded, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. The words felt ancient and powerful on her tongue, each syllable sending vibrations through the ground beneath her feet. As she spoke, the air began to change. The temperature dropped dramatically and clouds swirled overhead, but not natural ones. These were darker, moving with purpose, as if drawn by the power of her words. The aliens must have noticed too, their ship's energy readings were fluctuating wildly. Deep within the mountains, something stirred, something that had slumbered since before humans first walked the earth. Sarah could feel its consciousness brushing against her mind, ancient and vast and utterly alien in its own right. This was humanity's last hope, but as its presence grew stronger, a terrifying thought occurred to her. Perhaps the monks hadn't been protecting the scroll from humans. Perhaps they had been protecting humanity from what the scroll could unleash. The ground began to shake, and far below, in caverns that hadn't seen light in millions of years, enormous eyes opened. Sarah continued the incantation, even as doubts crashed through her mind. The Arcthrari ships were now moving into attack formation, their weapons charging. But they had no idea what was about to emerge from Earth's depths. Lieutenant Rodriguez's voice came through again, tinged with awe and terror. Dr. Chen, what are those readings we're getting from inside the mountain? Before Sarah could respond, the first of the ancient ones began to rise. Dr. Sarah Chen stood at the edge of the Tibetan plateau, her breath forming clouds in the frigid mountain air. Behind her, the remnants of humanity's last stronghold stretched across the valleys, a sprawling network of caves and hastily constructed bunkers. Above, the alien vessels hung in the stratosphere like metallic thunderclouds, their surfaces reflecting the dying light of the sun. 3 months had passed since they arrived. 3 months of watching Earth's greatest cities fall, of seeing our most powerful weapons bounce harmlessly off their shields. The Arcthrari, as they called themselves, hadn't come to negotiate or study us. They'd come to harvest. Sarah pulled the ancient scroll from her pack, its parchment crackling beneath her fingers. Written in a script that predated known civilization, it had been discovered in a hidden monastery just days before the invasion. For weeks, she and her team had worked tirelessly to decode its messages, even as the world crumbled around them. Dr. Chen. Lieutenant Rodriguez's voice crackled through her earpiece. They're beginning their descent. Whatever you're planning, it needs to happen now. Sarah unrolled the scroll, her eyes tracing the familiar patterns. The monks who had protected it for millennia had left clear warnings. The power contained within these words was never meant to be unleashed, but they had never faced extinction. I'm starting the incantation, she responded, her voice steady, despite the fear coursing through her veins. The words felt ancient and powerful on her tongue, each syllable sending vibrations through the ground beneath her feet. As she spoke, the air began to change. The temperature dropped dramatically, and clouds swirled overhead, but not natural ones. These were darker, moving with purpose, as if drawn by the power of her words. The aliens must have noticed too, their ship's energy readings were fluctuating wildly. Deep within the mountains, something stirred. Something that had slumbered since before humans first walked the earth. Sarah could feel its consciousness brushing against her mind, ancient and vast and utterly alien in its own right. This was humanity's last hope, but as its presence grew stronger, a terrifying thought occurred to her. Perhaps the monks hadn't been protecting the scroll from humans. Perhaps they had been protecting humanity from what the scroll could unleash. The ground began to shake, and far below, in caverns that hadn't seen light in millions of years, enormous eyes opened. Sarah continued the incantation, even as doubts crashed through her mind. The Arc-Thrari ships were now moving into attack formation, their weapons charging. But they had no idea what was about to emerge from Earth's depths. Lieutenant Rodriguez's voice came through again, tinged with awe and terror. "Dr. Chen, what are those readings we're getting from inside the mountain?" Before Sarah could respond, the first of the ancient ones began to rise. The mountain didn't so much crack as unfold. Massive segments of rock and ice peeled away like petals of a blooming flower, revealing something that defied comprehension. A creature of impossible scale emerged, its body composed of what appeared to be living crystal and shadow. It towered above the landscape, making the alien ships look like toys in comparison. Holy Mother of Rodriguez's voice cut off as the creature unfurled what could only be described as wings, though they seemed to bend reality itself, creating ripples in the very fabric of space. The Arc-Thrari ships immediately opened fire, their energy weapons blazing across the sky. But the beams seemed to vanish into the creature's crystalline surface, absorbed into its otherworldly form. Sarah watched in fascination and horror as more of the ancient ones emerged from different peaks, each unique yet equally massive. Some appeared as serpentine forms of pure energy, others as geometric shapes that shouldn't have been able to move, yet flowed like liquid mercury. In her mind, Sarah felt their collective consciousness awakening, and with it came understanding. These weren't just creatures, they were Earth's original inhabitants, self-exiled into dimensional stasis eons ago when they foresaw a terrible future. Now they had returned, but to what end? The lead Arc-Thrari ship launched what appeared to be their primary weapon, a beam of such intensity that the air itself ignited. But before it could strike, one of the crystal beings moved with impossible speed, intercepting the beam. Instead of absorbing it, this time the creature redirected the energy, amplifying it through its crystalline body and sending it back with such force that 3 alien ships were instantly vaporized. Dr. Chen, a voice resonated in her mind, vast and multifaceted like a chorus of ancient bells. "Your species has awakened us, but you do not comprehend the cost. We are the guardians, yes, but also the harbingers. Our return marks more than the salvation you seek, it marks the beginning of the great transformation." Sarah's blood ran cold. "What transformation?" she whispered, though she knew they could hear her thoughts. "Every species faces this choice eventually," the voice continued as the battle raged overhead. "Evolution or extinction. The Arc-Thrari fled their choice eons ago, consuming world after world to avoid their own transformation. That is why they fear us. That is why they have hunted our kind across the galaxies. But they cannot run forever, and neither can humanity." Above, the alien ships were retreating, their formations breaking apart in panic. But Sarah hardly noticed, fixated on the shifting patterns within the nearest Guardian's crystalline body. Within its facets she saw images of human cities transforming into impossible architectures, of people changing in ways she couldn't quite comprehend. "The Arc-Thrari aren't here just to harvest us, are they?" she asked, the terrible truth dawning on her. "They're here because they knew we might awaken you." "Correct, little one. And now you face the same choice they once did. Your species can embrace transcendence through us, or face extinction through them." Sarah watched as more guardians rose from mountains across the horizon, their forms blotting out the sun. She had succeeded in saving humanity from the aliens, but at what cost? The choice she had just thrust upon her entire species might be even more momentous than the invasion itself. And somewhere in the depths of her mind, she felt the Guardian's power beginning to flow through her, starting changes she wasn't sure humanity was ready to face. The transformation began with the sky. As Sarah watched, the atmosphere itself seemed to crystallize in patches, creating geometric patterns that shimmered with colors that had no names in any human language. The remaining Arc-Thrari ships were frantically jumping to hyperspace, leaving trails of distorted reality in their wake. But Sarah barely noticed their retreat. Her attention was fixed on her own hands, which had begun to emit a soft, pulsing light. The change wasn't painful instead. It felt like awakening from a dream she hadn't known she was having. Her consciousness expanded, allowing her to perceive dimensions that had always been there but had remained hidden from human awareness. "Dr. Chen." Rodriguez's voice seemed to come from both her earpiece and directly into her mind. "Something's happening to the civilians in the bunkers. They're changing." Through her enhanced perception, Sarah could sense it all, thousands of humans beginning their metamorphosis. Some were panicking, while others had fallen into a state of tranquil acceptance. She could feel their fear, their wonder, their confusion, all rippling through the collective consciousness that was gradually taking shape. The integration has begun, the Guardian's voice resonated. Your kind's quantum consciousness is awakening, but be warned, not all will survive the transition. Some minds cannot adapt to the expansion of reality. Sarah stumbled forward, her body feeling simultaneously heavier and lighter. How many? She managed to ask. How many will we lose? That depends on your role, Sarah Chen. The first to change become the anchor's guide points for the others. You are an anchor now. Your understanding will help determine how many of your kind successfully traverse the barrier between what they are and what they must become. The implications hit her like a physical blow. She wasn't just a witness to this transformation, she was responsible for helping shape it. Around her, the air continued to crystallize, creating what looked like floating geometric webs that pulsed with information she was slowly beginning to understand. Through these new senses, she became aware of similar transformations beginning across the globe. The Guardians had emerged from ancient places worldwide: Uluru in Australia, Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa, the Mariana Trench in the Pacific. Each site was becoming a nexus of change, sending waves of transformation across the Earth's surface. But something else caught her attention, a darker current in the flow of energy. Some humans weren't just failing to transform, they were actively fighting it. And that resistance was creating dangerous distortions in the fabric of reality itself. The Arc-Thrari faced the same challenge, the Guardian explained. Their society fractured between those who welcomed transcendence and those who fought to remain unchanged. The resistors eventually became what you know as the Arc-Thrari, beings who chose to flee across space, consuming other worlds' resources in a futile attempt to maintain their original form. Sarah watched in horror as the first signs of similar conflict erupted. Military bases worldwide were mobilizing, some seeking to protect the transformation sites, others attempting to bomb them. Through the crystalline webs, she could see capital cities descending into chaos as the changed and unchanged clashed in the streets. We must do something, she broadcast, hoping the other anchors could hear her. We need to help people understand this isn't an end, it's an evolution. Be careful, the Guardian warned. Your new abilities may overwhelm those not ready to receive them. And be warned, the Arc-Thrari will return. They cannot allow Earth to become what they fled from becoming. Their entire existence is dedicated to preventing the spread of transcendence across the galaxy. As if in response to these words, Sarah's enhanced senses detected movement in the outer solar system. More Arc-Thrari ships, hundreds of them, were emerging from hyperspace near Jupiter. This wasn't a harvesting fleet, it was an extinction fleet. Through the crystalline network, she felt other anchors across the planet becoming aware of the threat. Humanity now faced a race against time, achieve transcendence before the Arc-Thrari could return to stop it, while preventing their own society from tearing itself apart in the process. Sarah took a deep breath and reached out with her new senses, touching the minds of those in the nearby bunkers. She had to find a way to guide them through this change, to help them understand that humanity's greatest test wasn't just surviving an alien invasion, it was surviving their own evolution. And somewhere in the vast network of consciousness that was forming, she felt something else stirring, the first hints of what humanity might become if they survived the next 48 hours. The first wave of conscious expansion hit Sarah like a tsunami. Through the crystalline network, she experienced thousands of human minds awakening simultaneously, each one a unique pattern in an increasingly complex tapestry. Some blazed like newborn stars, while others flickered uncertainly between states of being. Contact in the Mediterranean, Rodriguez's transformed consciousness touched hers. His military training had given him an organized, tactical approach to the change. The Italian Navy is engaging with transformed civilians who are creating something in the water. Sarah extended her awareness across the globe through the geometric patterns that now laced the atmosphere. What she saw near Naples took her breath away. Hundreds of transformed humans were suspended above the water's surface, their bodies radiating prismatic light as they collaborated on something massive. The sea itself was being restructured at the molecular level, crystalline structures rising from the depths to form what appeared to be a new kind of matter altogether. But even as she watched this miracle of transformation, she felt the shadow of resistance growing. Military bases in several countries had gone dark, shielding themselves with experimental technology designed to block the crystalline network. In these blind spots, she could sense concentrated pockets of fear turning to violent determination. They're targeting the anchor points, the Guardian's voice resonated through the network. Those who fear change seek to sever the transformation's guidance system. You must protect the other anchors, Sarah Chen. Without you, the transformation will become chaos. A deafening roar pulled her attention skyward. A squadron of fighter jets streaked overhead, their weapons primed. But these weren't targeting the alien ships anymore, they were aiming for the Guardians themselves. Before Sarah could react, one of the crystalline beings moved with liquid grace. Instead of destroying the jets, it enveloped them in a field of shifting reality. The pilots' consciousnesses were instantly connected to the network, their terror transforming into understanding as their bodies and machines merged into new forms of existence. Time fractures detected. Another anchor broadcast globally, a quantum physicist from Beijing whose mind had adapted particularly well to the change. The Arc-Thrari fleet is manipulating space-time to accelerate their approach. Estimated arrival has shifted from 48 hours to less than 12. Sarah felt a spike of panic ripple through the network. 12 hours wasn't enough time for a complete transformation of humanity. Too many were still unchanged, and those in the process were vulnerable. The Arc-Thrari would strike when they were at their weakest. But then she noticed something extraordinary. The transformed humans in Naples weren't just reshaping matter, they were creating a new form of technology, one that merged biological, mechanical, and quantum properties. Similar developments were occurring at transformation sites across the planet. Humanity wasn't just changing, they were innovating at an impossible rate, drawing on their newly expanded consciousness to create tools and weapons that had never existed before. The confluence approaches, the Guardian announced, its voice carrying a note of what might have been pride. Your species learns faster than any we have guided before. But now you face the moment of greatest peril, the bridge of existence. Through the network, Sarah felt the truth of these words. The transformed humans were reaching a critical point where their collective consciousness could either stabilize into a new form of existence or collapse into chaos. Success would mean transcendence beyond anything they could imagine. Failure meant extinction. In orbit, the International Space Station had become another transformation nexus. The astronauts aboard, their minds already accustomed to seeing Earth from a different perspective, were among the first to fully grasp the scope of the change. Through their eyes, Sarah saw the planet itself beginning to shift, lines of force and consciousness wrapping around it, like a cocoon of light. But a new threat was emerging. The unchanged military forces weren't just targeting anchor points, they had accessed nuclear weapons. In their desperation to stop what they couldn't understand, they were willing to destroy everything. Sarah, Rodriguez's consciousness touched hers again, more urgently now. We're detecting launches, multiple ICBMs in the air, and something else. The transformed humans in each region are responding, but not in any way we expected. They're not trying to stop the missiles. They're trying to incorporate them. Sarah expanded her awareness, taking in the full scope of what was happening. The transformed humans had recognized a terrible truth. They couldn't fight the unchanged without destroying them. Instead, they were attempting something far more ambitious, a forced acceleration of the entire transformation process. As nuclear fire blossomed in the stratosphere, humanity faced its ultimate test. Would they emerge as something entirely new, or would their own fear of change be their final undoing? And through it all, the Arc-Thrari extinction fleet grew closer, their weapons primed to sterilize a world rather than allow it to achieve what they had feared to become. The nuclear missiles arced through the crystallizing atmosphere, their contrails weaving through the geometric patterns that now laced the sky. But as they reached their apogee, something unprecedented occurred. The transformed humans at each target site didn't just try to stop the missiles, they reached out with their collective consciousness and rewrote the fundamental laws of physics in localized bubbles of space-time. The nuclear warheads didn't detonate, they transcended. Each explosion transformed into a sphere of pure possibility, drawing the unchanged humans within their radius into an accelerated evolution. What was meant to be an act of destruction became a catalyst for transformation. The bridge is forming. The Guardian's voice resonated through the network with newfound urgency. The confluence comes earlier than expected. Your species' desperation has become your salvation. Sarah watched in awe as the transformed spheres expanded, connecting with each other through the crystalline network. The forced evolution was spreading faster than anyone had anticipated, creating a cascade effect that rippled across the planet. Even those who had resisted the change were being swept up in the wave of transformation. But there was no time to celebrate this victory. The Arc-Thrari extinction fleet had arrived, their ships darkening the skies over every major continent. Their weapons were unlike anything from the first wave. These could unmake reality itself, designed specifically to prevent the transformation they so feared. "You cannot stop this," Sarah broadcast to the alien fleet. Her consciousness expanded to encompass the entire planet. "Humanity has already changed. We are becoming what you feared to become." The Arc-Thrari response came not in words but in action. Their reality-unmaking weapons fired simultaneously across the globe, sending ripples of uncreation toward the Earth's surface. But they hadn't counted on what humanity had become in those precious hours of transformation. The transformed humans, now existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously, didn't try to block or deflect the attacks. Instead, they accepted them, channeling the energy of uncreation through the crystalline network and using it to break the final barriers of their own evolution. In that moment, Sarah understood the Guardians' true purpose. They hadn't come to save humanity or to fight the Arc-Thrari. They had come to witness the birth of something entirely new, a species that could face extinction and transform it into transcendence. The uncreation waves collided with Earth's new crystalline shell, and for a moment, everything hung in perfect balance. Then, in a flash of impossible light, humanity made its final transformation. Every human consciousness, whether originally willing or resistant, merged into a singular yet infinite entity. They became beings of pure quantum consciousness, existing simultaneously across all dimensions, their understanding encompassing the full scope of reality itself. The Arc-Thrari fleet hung motionless in space, witnessing what they had spent eons running from. Through her vastly expanded awareness, Sarah felt their fear turn to wonder, and then finally to acceptance. They had spent so long fighting against transformation that they had forgotten its purpose not to end what they were, but to allow them to become what they could be. "The cycle is complete," the Guardians announced, their forms beginning to fade. "Our task is done. The universe gains new gardeners, new guides, new guardians. The transformation will spread, as it was always meant to." Sarah felt her individual consciousness merging with the greater whole of transformed humanity, but somehow maintaining its unique perspective, a singular note in an infinite symphony. Through their collective awareness, she could see the Arc-Thrari ships beginning to lower their weapons, their crews finally ready to embrace the change they had fled for so long. Earth itself had become something new, not just a planet, but a nexus of consciousness, a beacon of transformation that would ripple across the galaxy. The crystalline networks extended into space, reaching out to other worlds, other species, offering them the choice that the Arc-Thrari had once denied them. And in that final moment of transformation, Sarah understood the true nature of the ancient force they had unleashed. It wasn't a weapon, or a tool, or even a form of evolution. It was the universe itself, becoming conscious through its children, spreading awareness and transformation across the cosmos. The story of humanity as a separate, earthbound species had ended, but their new story, as beings of pure consciousness and infinite potential, was just beginning. The stars beckoned, not as distant points of light, but as future homes for the transformation that would eventually encompass all of existence. In the end, when aliens had pushed humans to the edge, they hadn't just unleashed an ancient force, they had unleashed the destiny of consciousness itself, and the universe would never be the same.